Growing up in the sprawling estates of San Francisco, I lived in a world of gold-plated expectations. My father, Arthur, helmed a tech empire, while my mother, Eleanor, curated a life of flawless social standing. Everything was tailored for my older sister, Sienna, the golden child who effortlessly collected Ivy League accolades. But for me, the world was a blur of jumbled letters and cold stares. Diagnosed with dyslexia at age 7, I wasn't met with support, but with a suffocating sense of shame. My parents dismissed my struggles, often labeling me the slow one during tense family dinners. While Sienna received elite tutors and every resource to shine, I was cast aside, left to navigate my silent struggle alone. Have you ever felt like the black sheep of your family? Drop a "stay strong" in the comments if you've ever had to prove people wrong. The only person who truly saw my silent struggle was my grandmother, Evelyn. She wasn't blind to my father Arthur's toxic behavior or his obsessive penny pinching. She watched quietly as I worked multiple jobs just to buy basic essentials. Meanwhile, Arthur pampered my sister Sienna without a second thought. Knowing how ruthless her son could be, Evelyn decided to take matters into her own hands. 2 years before her passing, she secretly met with a sharp attorney named Mr. Vance. She didn't trust Arthur with a single dime, especially when it came to my future. Behind closed doors, Evelyn drafted an ironclad private will just for me. She legally transferred the deed of her home directly into my name. On top of that, she set up a secure trust holding her entire life savings of $85,000. For Evelyn, this wasn't just money, it was my ultimate lifeline. It was a safety net to ensure I'd always. The catch? I had absolutely no idea this fortune existed. While we shared quiet moments on her porch, she kept the secret locked away. But what happens when Arthur realizes there's a legacy sitting just out of his reach? Make sure to follow so you don't miss the turning point. The betrayal is just getting started. When Grandma Evelyn peacefully passed away, I was devastated, losing the only person who had ever truly made me feel safe. But for my father, Arthur, her death wasn't a tragedy, it was an opportunity. Shortly after the funeral, official letters from Mr. Vance's law firm began arriving in the mail, addressed directly to me. I never saw a single one of them. For 5 months, Arthur systematically intercepted my mail, hiding every notification about the trust fund and the deed to the Maple Street house. He spun a web of deceit right under my nose while I was still mourning the only heart that loved me. You might think Arthur was drowning in debt or funding a secret life, but the truth was much colder. His betrayal was driven by pure, unadulterated financial paranoia, a lingering trauma from a past bankruptcy that twisted him into a predator. He was determined to build an impenetrable financial fortress for himself, and he didn't care if he had to steal my only safety net to do it. Arthur finally crossed the point of no return. He dug up my old medical consent forms and began meticulously tracing my handwriting. His goal was to forge my signature on a power of attorney, illegally transfer the house into his name, and take out a massive mortgage against it. Arthur thought he had the perfect crime figured out, but fate was about to throw a terrifying wrench into his plan. 3 months after Eleanor's funeral, Maya's life was shattered in the blink of an eye. She was driving home, completely exhausted after a grueling 12-hour overnight nursing shift, when a speeding pickup truck blew through a red light. The impact was devastating, folding the driver's side of her car like a piece of thin paper. First responders rushed her straight to St. Catherine's, the exact same hospital where she worked. The emergency room team scrambled frantically to save one of their own. Maya was suffering from severe internal injuries and rapidly losing blood. The doctors knew they had to get her into the operating room immediately, but they needed official authorization for the high-risk, expensive surgery. Standard procedure meant calling her immediate next of kin, her father, Arthur. But Maya knew Arthur better than anyone. She knew his obsession with money, and she knew exactly how he viewed her medical expenses. Because of that, 3 years earlier, she had quietly and intentionally signed her legal healthcare proxy over to her fiercely loyal best friend, Beverly. As the chaos of the ER swirled around her and her vision began to fade into black, Maya's ultimate survival instinct kicked in. She grabbed the scrubs of a trusted senior nurse. With her very last ounce of strength before losing consciousness entirely, she gasped out a desperate plea. "Don't call my dad. Call Beverly." medical proxy. Will Beverly make it in time, or will Arthur get there first? Arthur arrived at St. Catherine's Hospital just before midnight, but he didn't sprint down the halls looking for Maya's room. Instead, when the lead surgeon pulled him aside, Arthur had only one thing on his mind: the price tag. The doctor urgently explained that Maya's internal bleeding wouldn't stop. She needed an immediate, high-risk secondary surgery to survive. But the surgeon also warned Arthur of the steep medical costs and the grim reality that Maya could require expensive, long-term care if she fell into a vegetative state. For Arthur, that medical update sounded like an absolute financial nightmare. His deep-rooted, obsessive fear of a drained bank account completely eclipsed whatever tiny shred of fatherly love he had left. The thought of paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for his daughter's survival was simply off the table. Looking the seasoned surgeon dead in the eye, Arthur put on a chillingly convincing mask of a grieving, merciful parent. "Let her go," he said, his voice terrifyingly steady. "She's been a financial drain her whole life. She's suffered enough, and I just can't bear to let her live a life of endless pain." Using that sickeningly hypocritical excuse, Arthur flat out refused to sign the life-saving surgical consent forms. He didn't even walk down the corridor to look at his youngest daughter through the ICU glass. He simply turned around, walked out the hospital doors, and drove home to go to sleep, leaving Maya alone to die. While Arthur was fast asleep in his comfortable bed, believing his financial problem was finally solving itself, a completely different kind of family was fighting for Maya's life. Down in the ER, the head nurse on shift wasn't about to let a brilliant young colleague die just because her father was a heartless man. Remembering Maya's desperate final words before passing out, the nurse immediately dug into the hospital's internal employee files. It took her less than 2 minutes to find exactly what she was looking for: a legally binding healthcare proxy, signed and notarized 3 years prior. At 11:14 p.m., Beverly's phone rang. Beverly wasn't blood, but she was Maya's fiercely loyal best friend, the kind of friend who drops absolutely everything. Without a second thought, Beverly jumped into her car and drove 90 minutes straight through a blinding rainstorm. She sprinted through the sliding doors of St. Catherine's Hospital at 12:51 a.m., gripping her driver's license. When the doctors told her what Arthur had done, Beverly didn't even blink. Slamming her ID on the counter, she invoked her legal authority as Maya's proxy and officially revoked Arthur's death sentence. With a steady hand, she signed the surgical consent forms that Maya's own father had refused to touch. Because of a best friend's unwavering love, the surgical team scrubbed back in, and the life-saving procedure was a massive success. Shout out your true friends in the comments below, who step up when family lets you down. Trust me, you won't want to miss the devastating discovery Maya makes when she finally wakes up. Hit subscribe and stay tuned for part 7. For 3 agonizing weeks, Maya lay in a medically induced coma. But while she was hooked up to machines, her father, Arthur, was busy securing his payout. For him, her coma wasn't a family tragedy, it was a golden window of opportunity. With Maya totally incapacitated, Arthur easily finalized the forged power of attorney. He brazenly transferred the deed of Grandma Eleanor's Maple Street home into his own name and took out a massive $280,000 mortgage against it, completely undetected. When Maya finally opened her eyes 21 days later, she learned the devastating truth about how Arthur had abandoned her in the ER. But the emotional. Shortly after being discharged and recovering at Beverly's house, Maya was trying to get her life back in order when she noticed her credit score had mysteriously tanked. Then she uncovered a misdelivered banking statement for a massive loan she had never authorized. The dark piece. Instead of breaking down, Maya got angry. She immediately called Mr. Vance, her late grandmother's estate attorney. Within hours, they pulled the county deed records, and the sickening reality of Arthur's fraud was laid bare. While she was literally fighting for her final breaths, her own father had stolen her only financial safety net. But Maya wasn't a silent victim anymore. She was ready to strike back. That Sunday, Arthur walked into his local community church, a place where he had spent years building a flawless, respectable reputation. When it was time for the congregation's weekly testimonies, Arthur slowly stepped up to the microphone. Looking exhausted and grief-stricken, he put on the performance of a lifetime. With perfectly timed crocodile tears, he told the packed room about Maya's horrific car crash. He painted himself as a devoted, heartbroken father who had been forced to make the most agonizing medical decisions a parent could ever face. He masterfully twisted his sickening refusal to pay for her life-saving surgery into an act of profound mercy, claiming he just couldn't bear to see his youngest daughter suffer. The entire congregation ate it up, murmuring in deep sympathy. But then, the heavy oak doors at the back of the sanctuary swung open. Maya walked in. She was still bruised, pale, and moving slowly, but she was very much alive. A stunned silence fell over the 100-plus people in the pews. The head pastor, completely unaware of Arthur's twisted betrayal and believing he was witnessing a literal miracle, beamed with joy. Overcome with emotion, the pastor immediately gestured for Maya to come up to the altar, inviting her to take the mic and share her incredible testimony. Arthur's face instantly drained of color. He was trapped in his own lie. Handing the microphone to the daughter he had left for dead was his absolute worst nightmare. Taking the microphone from the bewildered pastor, Maya looked out at the sea of sympathetic faces. Her voice didn't shake. "Thank you for your prayers," she began, the sanctuary dropping into dead silence. "But my father just lied to you." With cold, hard facts, she exposed exactly what happened in the ER that night. She quoted his own words from the hospital incident report, revealing how he coldly refused to authorize her life-saving surgery because he considered her a financial drain. Horrified gasps echoed through the pews. Before Arthur could even attempt to interrupt and save his crumbling reputation, the heavy side doors opened. In walked Mr. Vance, Grandma Eleanor's sharp-suited estate attorney, carrying a thick leather briefcase. He stepped right up to the altar, pulling out the original notarized will alongside the undeniable, heavily documented proof of Arthur's massive $280,000 mortgage fraud. Backed into a corner and sweating profusely, Arthur desperately scanned the front row, locking eyes with his golden child, Chloe. He silently pleaded with his older daughter to defend him, to help him maintain the flawless family illusion he had spent years building. For her entire life, Chloe had always looked the other way. But as she stared at her bruised, battered sister, something finally snapped. Tears streaming down her face, Chloe stood up. Her voice trembled as she made a devastating confession to the entire church. She had seen Arthur hiding the lawyer's letters from Maya for months. With that single, undeniable admission, Arthur's moral facade completely shattered. His perfect lie was dead. Arthur's perfect life completely collapsed. He was immediately stripped of his church positions and faced felony fraud charges. To avoid prison time, he accepted a strict plea deal for probation and was forced to... A month later, Maya finally turned the key to the Maple Street house. Stepping inside, she was instantly greeted by the comforting scent of Grandma Eleanor's lavender. Standing quietly in her own home, Maya realized a profound truth. Setting strict boundaries and cutting off toxic family members isn't an act of bitter revenge, it's pure survival. You don't owe anyone your peace, your health, or your life. Thank you so much for watching this incredible story. If Maya's journey to justice inspired you, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and check out our next video.